Secondo richiamo, vi prego di prendere posto, dobbiamo cominciare la seconda parte della riunione. No, non dirmi che sono tutti andati via.
No, ci sono molte persone che...
Tu dici?
Stanno ancora molte persone che stanno andando, che stanno mangiando, che stanno entrando un sacco di persone. Io non lo so, sempre.
Allora, che facciamo? Cominciamo? Aspettiamo un secondo?
Sì, allora per cortesia, coloro i quali sono fuori almeno facciano silenzio, pregate per cortesia, come dire, la presenza non è doverosa, ma perlomeno... Allora, sì, Marcel, prego, ricomincerei.
Parlo io. Dunque, adesso la...
Now, the floor goes to my dear colleague, Floriana Bulfon. She wrote many books about terrorism and organized crime. Her latest one is called Macro Mafia, tells us about the clans that dominate the drug market all over the world. I would like Floriana to tell us something about this issue. The trend is the creation of a holding company of organized crime. Hello, everybody. It's a great honor to be here. And I also loved the previous speeches that have been very inspiring to me. I would like to start by saying these words. At a certain point, the mafia discovered that through drug trafficking, its profits could have been multiplied in an infinite way. So the mafia started producing these resources. And so a huge national problem was created. If the mafia becomes very, very powerful because it has so many resources which could resemble the budget amounts of small states. These are the words by Paolo Borsellino during a meeting with students in 1989. Falcone and Borsellino, they were very far-sighted magistrates because they anticipated the situation we are currently experiencing now. What did the mafias do? How could they manage such huge capitals? Like Borsellino said, they look for markets where to employ such huge amounts of money. And so they did. There's a Sicilian proverb, which I will say in Italian, and it goes like, the enemy is the same person who does the same job as you do. When I'm competing with someone else, it's easier for me to eliminate such a competitor. And Borsellino was trying to trace the story of the mafia trying to enter the world of capitalism. Borsellino had always in mind that motto about the enemy being the person who does your same job. He knew that the normal rules of the market would have been altered. But the mafia has its own method. Borsellino looked at Italy, looked at northern Italy, and looked at Switzerland. But he operated in another world. The Berlin Wall was still standing, so it was a whole another story. But now, what would he do? Maybe he would look at Dubai, where many godfathers during years were able to live a luxurious life while managing their business from abroad without any risk of being arrested. What if Borsellino and Falcone knew if would knew that there exists a consortium uniting bosses from the Italian, the Dutch, and the Bosnian mafia? This is no joke. This is reality. But I have to stress something. Daniel Keenan is an Irish mafia boss. He's the boss of Dubliner mafia, whose father studied in the same school as James Joyce. But now this man, Daniel Keenan, is considered very dangerous as the Colombian or Mexican bosses. Redouan Taghi, a Dutch man who has just been convicted to life imprisonment, or the Bosnian person, the Bosnian leader, was considered one of the most dangerous drug trafficker in the world. Remember, we're still talking about that consortium, and the Italian member is from the region of Campania. He won the second war of Secondigliano in Naples. He's called Raffaele Imperiale. He was a very learned man, and he had two paintings by Van Gogh that was stolen in a museum in Amsterdam. So this consortium has turned into reality the idea of holding company for drugs, for drug trafficking. I call this consortium macro mafia because it acts big. It has a huge dimension as of drug trafficking, involving tons of drugs delivered each time to Europe. They are macro mafias because they have huge funds that enables them to buy huge amounts of drugs, and this macro mafia is always able to solve problems when some accidents happen, like when drugs is being seized by police forces. It has a great logistics network, and it has infiltrated in cargoes. So cocaine follows the routes of cargo ships and is carried to Rotterdam, to Hanover. So ports are now the hubs for drugs. They welcome other goods, of course. They welcome raw materials. They welcome all sorts of things, but they also receive drugs. And Rotterdam is the main hub. So the macro mafia has built a secret network to export cocaine that is the most profitable product for the mafias. When I visited Rotterdam Harbor, I was I was in shock because it was enormous and it had it was a huge machine made of containers. And when I visited that area, I realized that security measures are very sophisticated, both from a computerized point of view and a physical one. But those measures were conceived when the Western world was fighting against Islamic terrorism. So they're suitable to identify weapons, but in the same time, an internal invisible enemy came in, infiltrated that network dedicated to goods. And so these safety systems are not suitable to detect drugs. Drug dealers, drug traffickers also have a significant network of accomplices that were corrupted by drug traffickers. Because there are people who can enter the harbor and enter the sites and can take the cocaine out of containers, and they are basically allowed. They are narco workers. They take the load of the drug inside of the containers, and they wait until the moment they can exit the port area. So the size of drug trafficking has become more and more important, more and more significant. Some drug cargoes are seized, but it's just a minimum portion of the huge quantities of drugs sent to Europe. These criminals are very creative and they have huge funds at their disposal in order to organize their drug trafficking. These people are also present in the market. They represent the evolution of the evolution of old gangsters, and they take advantage of innovation and of all the aspects of our society that is based on capitalism. So they live and thrive where capitalism plays a big role. They take advantage of sophisticated communication technologies without fear of being intercepted, of being tapped, because they use encrypted chat systems such as Sky ECC or EncroChat, but there are many others. So they have encrypted cell phones, and they communicate when they are far from each other. They can manage drug trafficking, they can manage homicides, any type of illegal activity. Since the early 2000s, the basic these organizations started living in the Arab Emirates, which became the headquarters of their activities. Because it's very difficult to extradite criminals from the Arab Emirates. but they also live and thrive in Bosnia, that is a very young and fragile nation, unable to establish good connections with other police forces in other countries. I remember about a criminal who was a fugitive in his own city during the war in Bosnia. Smail Sikalo is his name. He is one of the main collaborators of Edin Gajanin. And this man is very passionate about Ferrari cars and owns many of them in Dubai. This man is one of the most dangerous criminals in the Balkans. The U.S. authorities told us about the importance of Edin Gajanin. He is considered one of the most prolific drug traffickers. The Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, said that he represents a threat to global stability and a threat to the stability of the Balkan area. He is able to manage huge quantities of drugs and money and in such a way to represent a threat for a whole country. In 2019, Peruvian police discovered 12 tons of cocaine that was already packed and ready to leave for Europe. Its destination was precisely Bosnia-Herzegovina. Despite all of these evidence with this drug trafficking, a judge convicted him to home arrest. He escaped, and I also had a chance to interview him while he was a fugitive in Sarajevo. So the suspect is that he managed to corrupt someone in order to obtain home arrests, and then from home he was able to flee. In Sarajevo, he has many friends too, because most times he engages regular soldiers as bodyguards. Their motto is everything is on sale, and organized crime is very influential. So it's easy to imagine that narco capitals have a great role in a place that was entirely destroyed during the war. It also represents a connection between the Middle East and Europe. This man is also the owner of some restaurants, but this restaurant also hosts important people. I personally saw some judges eating there.
E di offrirsi ovviamente per il trasporto verso l'Olanda. Lui stesso era in contatto con Otoniel, l'ultimo grande boss colombiano.
Edin Gajanin was in touch with Otoniel, the last Colombian big leader, and they could establish a connection between Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Europe. And the cultivation of cocaine in these Southern American countries were enlarged in order to produce more and more cocaine. cocaine, because the support of such macro mafia in Europe was so huge that it could provide a network of export for huge quantities of drugs. This macro mafia owns many resources. If we think about Raffaele Imperiale, who is the son of a wealthy builder in Naples, well, he started investing in a chain of coffee shops in Amsterdam. He was not accused of any criminal action, yet he was the person who guided the Camorra War for the control over Secondigliano, a neighborhood in Naples. I think that John Lucas later on will talk about the Marengo trial and the escalation that happened in the Netherlands, which used to be a model for tolerance, for an orderly life in Europe, rich and prosperous, but now experiencing gangs of young people ready to kill anyone for just a few money. These are not simple teenagers. I interviewed some. A teenager who was 12 years old told me, "Oh yeah, you're from Italy. I love the Gomorrah series because they shoot a lot. But the best is the series Narcos about Pablo Escobar because he makes more money." So these young people, these teenagers, live in Amsterdam. So this teenager who had Moroccan origins had as a model Ridouan Taghi, a criminal. So now the Netherlands is the home of a very violent mafia and the home of Ridouan Taghi, who set up an important and violent organization. He was also able to take like normal teenagers and turn them into killers, into drug dealers in a neighborhood that used to be very tidy. It is in central Amsterdam. It's called De Bakis. Once I talked to one of them, and he explained to me that himself and other teenagers feel excluded from the Netherlands and feel excluded from the Dutch society. So they seek, they look for a future, a collocation, a group to belong to, and they find these criminal gangs in order to gain respect and a perspective for the future. So there are some actions in place to fight this situation. But we have to realize that the mafia prospers where there are gaps and weak points in legislation frameworks. Remember the Irish criminal man? Well, he took his permanent residence in Cyprus. I know that in Cyprus they welcome money and investments without questioning too much, without making any questions. The island of Cyprus experienced a building boom, which was basically used to money laundering. This Irish criminal established a business in many states like Libya, China, Greece, all over the world, basically, even the US. And he markets goods such as gold, sugar, cereals, and biofuels. He recruited hundreds of athletes in Marbella, Spain. These people know how to take advantage of globalization. They use cryptocurrencies to make huge money movements, but they also use more traditional instruments like gold bars. I also think of other systems, flying money, that is also very much used in China or the Arab world. This is basically a web whose hub is in Dubai, because Dubai is a safe place for them, because they're not being arrested. A man working for Raffaele Imperiale was stopped in Dubai because he had a fake ID. An Italian delegation went to Dubai to arrest this man, but then at the end, what they found was a man who was innocent, who had nothing to do with the Camorra. So someone had replaced that man somehow, and nobody knows what happened. So these people are so clever that they cannot be stopped, apparently. They are very pragmatic. For them, there's nothing personal. It's just business, you know. So this world has been investigated by journalists, but there are still no evidence from a legislative point of view. I mean, there are no final judgments in trials. There are relationships between Raffaele Imperiale and the Hezbollah movement in Lebanon. So we understand that the joint ventures between such dangerous criminals is a threat for our world. It is a new model of joint venture among mafias, and for this reason, we have to deploy a joint response to such a dangerous phenomenon. Please remember that you have to be concise. 10 minutes each maximum, please. Now, we leave the floor to the justice promoter of the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil, Mr. Lincoln Gakia, who denounced the growing influence of the Primeiro Comando do Capital, a terrorist organization that was created in prison. How many men are there in this commando? What are their relationship with politics? 10 minutes.
10 minuti. È venuto a Brasile. No.
No.
Grazie. Por favor.
morning, everybody. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to take part in this extraordinary study and coordinating meeting on international drug trafficking in honor of Giovanni Falcone. I apologize for my Spanish. I'll try to do my best. I'll try to speak a mix between Portuguese and Spanish. Before starting my presentation about the connections of the PCC, Primeiro Comando do Capital, with the Italian Mafia, I would like to share some considerations about Brazil. For those who do not know it, Brazil is a country with the size of a continent, the fifth biggest country in the world. Brazil occupies a geographical area almost as big as Europe. And you know, in Europe there are 28 countries. Brazil shares its borders with almost all Latin American countries except Chile and Ecuador, and with the main cocaine producers, Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. Today, Brazil has over 15,000 kilometers of land borders and over 7,000 kilometers of coastline. Brazil has almost 203 million inhabitants, and it is the seventh most populated country in the world. The state of Sao Paulo, where I live and work, has 44 million inhabitants. The metropolitan region of Sao Paulo counts over 21 million inhabitants. Brazil has one of the highest number of prisoners in the world, with over 800,000 prisoners, 604,000 of which are actually held in prison under a strict regime, and over 100,000 at house arrest. Brazil is the third country behind United States and China. In the Sao Paulo state, there are more than 200,000 prisoners. In Brazil, there are 53 criminal groups. We have two important ones: the Primeiro Comando do Capital, founded in the state of Sao Paulo, and the Comando Vermelho, founded in the state of Rio de Janeiro. The short introduction was needed to give you an idea of the dimensions of Brazil and of the huge problems we are dealing with. And now I will talk about the main topic of my speech, and I will share also a PowerPoint presentation with you. I will talk about the development of the PCC in Europe and its connections with the Ndrangheta. The PCC is a criminal organization as intended by the Palermo Convention. It was founded in 1993 by some prisoners in the prison of Taubaté in the state of Sao Paulo during a football match. The reasons behind the creation of the PCC were the dissatisfaction of prisoners due to the oppression and injustice perpetrated by the state. And also after a protest against the massacre of Carandiru, an important uprising with 111 deaths taking place in the prison of Sao Paulo in October 1992. The founders of the PCC have died and have been replaced today by other leaders, among which Marco Williams Herbas Camacho, known as Marcola. Here you can see an organizational chart showing the structure of the PCC, and here you can see the internal criminal organization of this group as a sort of company with its divisions, well-defined divisions and separate tasks. Starting investigating from the bottom, it would be very difficult to get to the top of this chart. And here we can see the leaders of the organization. All these criminals are under severe prison regime, are isolated in prison in Brazil thanks to a request I submitted in December 2018, and this cost my freedom because since then I received several threats. The PCC operate at the same time 24 prisons, killing dozens of enemies in prison, and the PCC became popular in the whole country. The PCC also tried to blow up the main criminal court in Latin America, in Sao Paulo, and the stock exchange of the capital city. In May 2003, so as I was saying, in 2003, by order of leader Marcola, the PCC killed criminal judge Antonio José Machado Diaz. He was a dear friend of mine. I used to play football with him, go fishing together. In May 2006, the PCC promoted attacks against military police and police delegations in the state of Sao Paulo, and also attacked banks, supermarkets, set fire to buses, and basically paralyzing the entire city of Sao Paulo. These attacks caused the death of over 500 people, among policemen, civilians, and criminals. The PCC is a criminal organization conducting terrorist actions. Since 2010, the PCC has relations with the FARC, the Colombian FARC, and the EPP, the People's Army in Paraguay, a paramilitary organization in South America providing drugs and military training to the members of the PCC. The PCC is present today in all 26 states of Brazil, including in the federal capital city, and it is operational in all Latin American countries, with over 32,000 members. Besides Brazil, the PCC is present in more than 23 countries. Mainly in Latin America, but also in several European countries. In 2021, there were over 1,500 members of the PCC outside Brazil. Today, the PCC is a Mafia-type transnational criminal organization. based on my evaluation, as the main point of departure for cocaine from Brazil is through the port of Santos, considered to be the main port in South America, with over 10,000 containers per day. Equal to 35% of the overall exports in Brazil. Criminals of the PCC act together with criminal organizations in Europe, such as the 'Ndrangheta from the Calabria region in Italy. The members of the PCC buy drugs in Andean countries, especially Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, paying between $1,200 to $1,800 per kilo and resell it in Europe at between 35,000 80,000 euros, up to $100,000 if cocaine is exported to Asia and Oceania. In December 2021, the North American government included the PCC in the sanctions list of the American Treasury, the OFAC, as the PCC is a dangerous criminal organization to the government, as mafia and Mexican and Colombian cartels, as well as terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah. Or Al-Qaeda. At present, I consider the PCC as a mafia-type criminal organization as it presents all the characteristics of mafia. Now, I will focus on the main characteristics of this criminal organization. And I'd like to focus on the first characteristic, the absence of state. In all criminal organizations of the world, it is important to strengthen the presence of the state. The state must be present. Then we have other characteristics. For example, cross-border and transnational transactions, the infiltration of mafia within the state authorities. This is what is actually happening in Brazil. Then the corruption of police forces, the cooperation with other criminal organizations, relations between the PCC and European mafias. We know that the PCC cooperates with Italian mafia, such as the 'Ndrangheta. The first contact of the PCC with Italian mafia members occurred in 1990. Many people think that it happened more recently, but it's not true. It dates back to the 90s. And during this first contact took place when the brothers Bruno and Renato Torsi, belonging to the Neapolitan Camorra and known as the Machine Gun Brothers, responsible for kidnapping in Italy, in Naples, for kidnapping several people. So these two brothers, brother Story, two Italian people, as I mentioned before, fled to Brazil and were arrested, becoming prisoners of the prison of Sao Paulo, together with the leader and founder of the PCC, Misael Aparecido da Silva, known as Misa, who drew inspiration from the Camorra when writing the first statute of the PCC. The brothers Torsi were extradited to Italy, keeping nevertheless to get in touch with Misael for several years. So they drew inspiration for founding the PCC in the 90s, following this contact between Misa and the brothers Torsi, members of the Neapolitan Mafia, the Camorra. Let's think about the Code of Silence, a very important point of the status of the PCC. Another evidence of the connection of the PCC with Italian Mafia is represented by the relations with other Italian criminals. For example, Domenico Pelli, leader of the Italian Mafia, was localized in Brazil. In 2019, Nicola Assisi was arrested in São Paulo and was considered to be a representative of the Calabrese Mafia. And he was known as the sobrino, the nephew. Nicola and his son Patrick moved to Brazil, creating the first connections between the PCC and the 'Ndrangheta. In July 2019, Nicola and Patrick, the son, were arrested in Sao Paulo. And today they are under hot prison regime and isolation in the federal prison of Sao Paulo in Brazil, as Marcola and other leaders of the PCC. Also, Mr. Tartaglia know very well that Nicole and Patrick lived in Brazil under a false identity. Another connection between the PCC and Italian Mafia was through a Brazilian criminal known as André Dorap, responsible for sending tons of cocaine to Italy in cooperation with the 'Ndrangheta. Andrea Dorap had connections with Morabito and other Italian criminals. In May 2021, criminal mafia member Rocco Morabito was arrested in Brazil. He is considered to be one of the main leaders of the 'Ndrangheta, and he had fled Italy several years ago. According to a Europol investigation, the so-called Eureka operation, Morabito negotiated the supply of war arms to the PCC as a payment for cocaine sent to Europe by the faction of Sao Paulo through the Brazilian ports. A joint investigation of police agencies of the United States, Italy, and Paraguay has shown the commercial agreements existing between the PCC and the Italian Mafia in this country. Morabito had already been extradited to Italy. Also, Vincenzo Pasquino was arrested in Brazil together with Morabito, another criminal acting in cooperation with the PCC. As I mentioned before, a joint investigation of police agencies of the United States, Italy, and Paraguay showing the commercial agreements existing between the PCC and Italian Mafia in this country. The investigation led to the seize of tons of drug in Paraguay and was known as the Spain operation. The Paraguayan prosecutor Marcelo Pecci took part in a meeting in Argentina in December 22, where he was investigating on the connections between the Italian Mafia and the PCC in Paraguay. Mr. Pecci was killed in Colombia during his honeymoon in May 2022. The European police considers the PCC as one of the main criminal groups in the world. The Europol has listed the PCC as a cartel. And here we can see other connections of the PCC with Mafia, the Albanian Mafia and the Balkan Mafia. The Brazilian Federal Police has also investigated on the connection between the PCC and the Albanian and Bulgarian Mafia for the distribution of cocaine coming from Bolivia and Colombia and directed to Europe. Serbian drug trafficker Alexander Nesic was found in Guarujá in Sao Paulo, where he was managing the export of cocaine to Europe through the port of Santos in 2023. Alexander is the son of Goran Nesic. They were both sent to Brazil by the Balkan Mafia, controlled by Darko Saric. The group was formed by former soldiers serving in the Bosnia War in the 90s. As I previously mentioned, there were connections between the PCC, the 'Ndrangheta, and Hezbollah. So these make me think of international drug trafficking. The Turkish chemist was identified as the chemist of the PCC, Garip Uk, responsible for the production of Moroccan drugs. Garip Uk was known not only by the DEA but also by the anti-terrorism agencies all over the world because he was the brother of Eray, who was accused to be a member of the international network of drug traffickers, giving Hezbollah part of their earnings in exchange for protection to act in the Middle East. So he is the brother of a terrorist who was held in Paraguay, Eray Us, a collaborator of Hezbollah. So there are evident connections between the PCC, the Italian Mafia, and other criminal organizations, especially from the Middle East. According to me, drug trafficking is always related to terrorism, at least concerning the financing of illegal activities. Here we can see the port of Antwerp, a Belgian port where record volumes of cocaine transited in 2022. Here we have a report of the French government, according to which in May, France was literally hit by drug trafficking of the PCC. Concerning money laundering, the PCC uses for money laundering has several options, sorry. For example, gas stations, car repair shops, real estates, building companies, digital banks, fintech. This is the current problem in Brazil. Digital banks and fintechs, and then bitcoins, bus companies, churches, legal mining, or also NGOs in the field of public health and the treatment of urban waste. Why the PCC uses churches in Brazil? Because they do not pay taxes. And in this way, it is possible to justify money laundering as donation. I'm particularly worried about the infiltration of the PCC and the national authorities. There's an ongoing investigation, which I coordinated. The PCC is also infiltrated in tenders for public transport in the area of Sao Paulo, and I was in charge for the coordination of an investigation called investigation focusing on public transport in the state of Sao Paulo and the infiltration of the PCC. In Sao Paulo, over 15,000 passengers each month uses public transport. So this is a huge risk. The participation of organized crime, particularly the PCC, in public tenders is a real threat, especially when dealing with public tenders for public services, for example, transports. Now I would like to conclude. After this presentation, it is clear to everybody that the international organized crime knows no border. The organized crime is not interested in legislation and takes advantage from our disorganization, committing illegal activities in every area of the world. It is a well-organized activity. Italian mafias, as well as other criminal organizations, such as the PCC, just to mention one, together with other criminal organizations in Europe, all do the same thing. They take advantage from weaknesses of the state. The only obstacle they found is here, within a smartphone. This is a problem for criminal organizations. For this reason, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to go on with the dream of Giovanni Falcone. I kindly ask you to respect his memory, to cooperate all together. We join efforts and activities here in Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean area. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie.
Sì.
Thank you. And now back to Europe with Don Lucas, General Prosecutor of the Netherlands and former journalist. He will speak about the so-called Mafia.
Signore e signori.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to be here today and offer my contribution to such an important meeting. When President Melillo asked me to speak briefly here today about the most famous trial in the Netherlands, the Marengo trial, I was happy to say yes. I'd like to thank the whole organization of this high-profile event, and I really hope that today, here, we will be able to take further steps towards the defense of the rule of law, take further steps towards a better cooperation in the fight against the big organized crime. We have to do that because our societies are under the pressure of violent threats represented by organized crime at an international level. The need to work together is self-evident. The big criminals can act and can perform their devastating activities anywhere in the world, but they prefer places where the law enforcement is not so strong. These criminals make huge sums of money, and this money can be used anywhere in the world, and it fuels violence against the innocent and fuels corruption. Our work has an international stake. Our enemies work at an international level, and we must do the same. Organized crime is an issue that you know since a long time in Italy. I remember that the 23rd of May and the 19th of July 1992 are two black days because the murders of Paolo Borsellino and Giovanni Falcone happened in those days, and also their bodyguards were killed in those attacks. So these two dates are carved in the souls of your country. 2 years ago, I walked from my city in the Netherlands to Rome. So I crossed a big portion of Italy, and I saw many squares and streets named under Paolo Borsellino and Giovanni Falcone. That is why I do my job. They paid with their life, but also many other people did. They paid a very high price for combating the organized crime. Police officers, bodyguards, people who were just doing their work. And not only in Italy. This event is paying homage to all of them, and it is a call to continue fighting against the big criminals at an international level. I apologize for not speaking Italian so much, so well, so I'll continue my speech in English, if you don't mind.
Before I go into more detail about the Marengo process, I would like to introduce myself. My name is John Lucas. I'm Chief Public Prosecutor at the National Public Prosecutor's Office in the Netherlands. Thank you, Floriana, for explaining the story and the context in which we have to work. It makes it easier for me to discuss the Marengo case. But to explain the Marengo trial, I should actually start with 3 shocking murders. These are three moments that have brought about a huge change in the way we look in the Netherlands at the fight against crime and the safety of those responsible for it. These three events come together in the Marengo process. I will get to that in a moment, but I will start in 2017. Don't be afraid, I don't have a long presentation, just to prevent that you have to look at me. The investigation against the organization of Ridwan Taghi had been going on for some time by 2017. It was a tough and complicated investigation, and none of the suspects wanted to explain themselves, and every suspect who was arrested invoked his right to remain silent. It was a characteristic of this organization. Anyone who spoke to the police was unsure of his life. The one who talks goes. He said it himself. At that time, crypto communication was not yet available for us for the investigative services. The arrival of a key witness changed that case. The use of key witnesses in the Netherlands is only done with great restraint. We don't do them very much. The arrangement is that the use of key witnesses is possible if the other means have been proven inadequate and there is an investigative interest is very, very great. The latter was certainly the case, given the large number of murders in the period of less than 2 years before. This made the need to take action inescapable. Where organized crime chooses excessive violence, the government must take a step forward. Doing nothing wasn't just an option. And with the arrival of the key witness, Marengo case accelerated because evidence could then be interpreted and placed. But the efforts of the key witness also led to the three events announced above, which became black pages for the Dutch society and the investigative services. I'll mention them briefly. On March 29, 2018, the brother of the key witness was murdered. It was a week after the deployment of the key witness was made public. Never before had an innocent family member been deliberately murdered in the Netherlands, most likely to target the witness who had made incriminating statements. It was an unprecedented event for the Netherlands. We never seen it before, and which we lost our naivety of it, at least forever, after that one. But more than a year and a half later, September 18, 2019, the murder of one of the key witnesses' lawyers followed. Derek Wiersum was a young father and a lawyer who assisted the key witness. He was shot dead on the street while leaving his house. And once again, Dutch society was confronted with a shocking murder surrounding this criminal case. The anger and the sadness were unprecedented. And then July the 6th, 2021. That day, the well-known journalist, and at that time also the confidant of the key witness, was shot in broad daylight in the center of Amsterdam. Journalist Peter R. de Vries died a few days later from his injuries. All three attacks had a huge impact on the society. This last one was even more shocking. The attack was undoubtedly made as publicly as possible to have maximum impact. In broad daylight, in the heart of Amsterdam, in a street where many people were walking and sitting on terraces, and members of the criminal organization even made film recordings to sow fear. And if I look at the letter of the law, this was just a terrorist attack from the organization. How could it come to this, and what happened after July the 6th? Ridwan Taghi grew up in a criminal youth group in a neighborhood in the central Netherlands. He started as a relatively small hash dealer, and in a very short period, he worked his way up to one of the largest players on the cocaine market in the Netherlands, and apparently so internationally. He also became the leader of a ruthless murder organization, actually for a long time without being noticed by police and judiciary. When he came into focus, it was already too late, and his murder organization had already struck repeatedly. In a world where, unfortunately, the cocaine trade and the associated major final interests are a great evil, excessive violence and corruption are always close by. The growth of this criminal stemmed from the trade and the duty of silence that everyone in his organization had. Whoever talked had to die. I already mentioned it. It was precisely the way in which the organization was set up, with many confidence and an enormous violence that affected anyone who turned away from the organization. That made the investigation very complicated. The Marengo trial itself, it's about 6 completed murders, 4 attempted murders, 4 preparatory acts for murder, and preparatory acts to causing an explosion in a building. One of these murders is a so-called, in Dutch, I don't know, but the translation is a mistaken murder, a painful term to express that somebody else was killed than was intended. 17 suspects were tried in the trial between 2018 and 2024, including the main suspect, Ridwan Taghi. On February 27, 2024, after 140 days in court, all 17 suspects were convicted for their role in Taghi's murder organization. Taghi and 2 others were sentenced to life imprisonment, and other suspects received prison sentences ranging from 29 years to 2 years. Appeals are currently underway in the case of 14 suspects. The offenses for which the suspects were on trial took place in less than a year and a half, as I said. The first murder was that of the spy shop owner on September 9, 2015. The reason for this murder was the fact that Taghi thought that the owner of this spy shop was cooperating with the law, while the reality was that the Judiciary had demanded administration from the spy shop owner against his will. The other murders also can be linked to either the organization's idea that the victim had spoken to the police to reveal something, or the settlement took place because there was a disagreement about payments within the criminal environment. Money that had not been paid or cocaine that had been stolen, was suspected stolen. And the manner in which the murder was to take place was repeatedly stated. It was to be a deterrent example to others so that no one would talk to the police or even talk about him. The first crime blogger who first mentions his name, just mentioning his name, was murdered for that reason. We have another investigations on which there are also lines to Ridwan Taghi, and another group of assassins are already convicted, and there might be lines, but in those liquidation are prosecuted others, and we don't prosecute Taghi in it because he's already for life. Our investigation has been comprehensive. It must be said that in this case, we did not primarily focus on the narcotics trade, although that was what the source of all murders was the source of all murders. We have done everything we can to prevent that this form of violent crime becomes in the Netherlands the new normal. We tried to trace and arrest everyone who was involved in this group, as well as we tried to arrest the successors of the people who we arrested. The trade in narcotics was a criminal offense, and we have been trying to put a stop to it, but this form of violence went much further and had to be stopped because everything in the Netherlands, everybody in the Netherlands was so enraged about this. We have largely succeeded in that, but it took a lot of effort, because the members of this group were in all kinds of places in the world and had their own tasks. The group had people in many places around the world who worked on their assignments from there. There were people responsible for the money flows, I will come to that later, for the transport of drugs, and ultimately for the violence. Marengo trial has come to a high price for the Dutch rule of law. In addition to the 6 murders mentioned above, there were also 3 murders in the immediate vicinity of the key witness. Several public prosecutors who are still under heavy personal security to this day. The deployment of the army to guarantee security about the hearings. It was unheard before in the Netherlands that the army would be near a courthouse. I could go on and on over what happened. Marengo trial has many victims and a lot of misery. Nevertheless, the trial has shown to society that justice will take its course, relentless, regardless of violent attempts to thwart this justice. In addition, in the Netherlands, we have learned a lot from the Marengo process and the events surrounding it. I would like to take you to a brief description of what we have learned. It's precisely lessons we have learned that make us convinced that we need to work together much more internationally if we want to take a stand against this international crime. The collaboration with you, our Italian and international colleagues, has also given us a lot of insight to what is and what remains necessary to put a stop to these forms of crime. After a murder of Peter R. de Vries, the journalist, a separate task force was set up in the Netherlands by the National Public Prosecutor's Office, my office, with the assignment to focus exclusively on tackling criminal power structures that threaten the rule of law. We use that term to describe a criminal organization that has become so large, so powerful, inventive and international that we believe that successful combating this organization can only be achieved by investing heavily in combating the entire system. Therefore, we no longer spend our scarce capacity only at intercepting cocaine transports or arresting ringleaders, but we focus on dismantling the entire criminal structure. This also requires that we recognize and remove crucial links within a criminal power structure. It may therefore mean that relatively smaller criminals are sometimes tackled earlier than larger criminals, precisely because we think they form an indispensable link within the power structure. Moreover, we saw that if we do not penetrate deeper into the organization, people will simply continue. Nothing will change. People remain silent for a while when there are arrests, then a substitution takes place and someone else becomes the leader and the trade continues. We are dealing with criminal organizations that have become so large and powerful that they are able to absorb blows and organize themselves again. And they organize themselves every time better. And how have we created that focus? Our insight into criminal networks have grown enormously after we were able to crack various crypto communication. EncroChat, Sky ECC, we talked about it more than once these days. And for the first time, we saw all communications between criminal networks worldwide, without code language, because people felt safe in mutual contact. We see that some criminal groups are working increasingly modularly. These are not automatically permanent connections, but we see certain components that are supportive and that require their own expertise. These units can work for multiple criminal groups and offer their services to different groups. Crime is a service. The knowledge we have gained through our investigation into crypto communication has taught us that we need to strengthen a number of areas. We distinguish about 7, and I briefly mention them, very briefly. Criminal money, of course. Follow the money, follow the money. Criminals want to make money, and a lot of money can be made in the cocaine trade. But that money also has to go back to the bosses. These bosses are not in the Netherlands. So there are flows of money from sales and trade on the street, but at the same time we see large flows of money in the background that never enter or leave the Netherlands. These money flows are regulated by a separate group that provides their services for these criminals, money bookers, Aula banking. And we have noted that there are several types of money flows in these networks, and each requiring a separate approach. Drugs, but also the production. The Netherlands is not only a trading country or a transit country for narcotics, but we're also a production country. Synthetic drugs are produced on a large scale in the Netherlands and exported to all the countries in the world. I'm sorry for that. Violence and threat. I've already mentioned that some groups were used who wanted to perform acts of violence on behalf of the criminals. Violence brokers take orders and deliver them. Others supply the weapons. And the people who carry them out, sometimes very, very professional. The shooters are often young people who want to do it for a reasonable price. You said it before. But don't know who the client is. In Marengo, we saw Polish and even a Caribbean group who carried out the violence just for payment. logistic and transports. We've been talking about harbors today and ports. We have been continuing to look for ways to make our ports, Rotterdam and also Antwerp, safer and ensure that the import of cocaine becomes more difficult. There were varying degrees of success because we also see that if we push here, it comes up somewhere else. It shifts to the other ports and becomes too difficult somewhere. That's why there is a need to work together on a system to make the ports safer and more resilient to the influence. I say you one thing, continued criminal conduct from detention and communication in general. Two topics that, unfortunately, have proven to be sometimes related. Two of Taghi's lawyers were arrested around the Marengo trial on suspicion of passing on information from Taghi to the outside world. Communication that made it possible for Taghi to partly continue his business operations from detention, the most protected prison we have. One of these lawyers has already been sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, and the trial against the other lawyer is still going on. All too obviously very, very sensitive, a bill is currently discussed in the Dutch Parliament to gain more insight into unwanted criminal communications from a detained suspect through his lawyer. And when tackling communication, we also can consider tackling so-called crypto platforms. The evidence against Taghi and his 16 co-suspects did not only consist on the statements of the key witness, but also of many hundreds of decrypted messages from crypto phones. In collaboration with other countries, the Netherlands now has considerable experience in obtaining and using cracked crypto information communications in criminal investigations. I would call the image that we received from the communication via those crypto telephones shocking, really shocking. The ease with which violence was discussed, the enormous scale of narcotics, and now we have a good idea how this trade works and which actors are crucial for it. This is the information that we must discuss with each other and that we will in our joint approach to this form of crime, because only together we can make a difference here. The Netherlands will continue to conduct investigation to these platforms where possible. Corruption and resilience. It comes all with the three: drugs, corruption, resilience. I would also mention corruption and resilience. Corruption comes naturally as a result of the large amount of money that can be earned. We see civil servants, port inspectors, but also police officers being drawn into the organization for money. A major concern for us. But there is also the resilience. The use of violence by this organization makes a lot of people cautious. Well, right now, we need to stand up strong and step forwards together. For me, the murdered magistrate Falcone Borsellino are examples. Our work is not finished. Much still has to be done. And finally, we have identified, you said it, the wannabes, the young people, the attraction of the quick money and the apparent glamour of criminals of the young people. Young people often have little education, no education, not smart enough that they will end up eventually in jail. These are boys from 14 or 15 who are tempted to empty containers, but they already need sometimes a thorough criminal justice. And I don't believe everybody in the Netherlands likes to watch Narcos. Most people like Montalbano. But we take actions in each of these 7 areas, with everything aimed at dismantling the criminal power structure. And yes, this requires enormous capacity from us, and it means that we sometimes have to make clear-cut choices about what we do and what we do not do. We don't have enough people. Coming to a conclusion, just as May the 23rd and July the 19th will remain black days for you, March 29, September 18, and July 6 will remain black days for us. We will continue to remember those days, but those days give us the task to work together against serious organized crime. The rule of law requires us to commit ourselves to this task, and I'm convinced that I forgot to click. Okay. And I'm convinced that we can only do that by joining forces and working together, where possible across the borders of our countries. In other words, a strategic coalition to jointly intensify the fight against criminal networks. Together we can enter into discussion which countries where criminals reside, where their money flows, and where they feel untouchable. there is no place for untouchables. Together in a coalition, we are stronger than criminals, and ultimately, the rule of law and the safety and health of our citizens will emerge stronger. I believe in international cooperation. We already do a lot together, but I would like to strengthen our collaboration even further, and I hope that your presence here is a sign that you want the same. Thank you very much. Grazie.
Vediamo l'ultimo adesso. Grazie.
Thank you. And now we'll have the last speaker. So we now move to Argentina with Eduardo Ezequiel Casal, General Prosecutor and Fiscal Prosecutor at the High Supreme Court. He's in charge for several tasks, really. For example, criminal police, regulation of prosecutors' office, organization of human resources, sanctions, and so forth and so on. So, Mr. Ezequiel Casal, how do you manage to be in charge for all of these tasks? Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here today. When dealing with the complexity of challenges posed by the fight against organized crime, we notice that this kind of crime is characterized by its cross-border operation. So we have several illegal activities, hierarchical structures used to protect interests, and these organizations have known over the years a great development and progresses, adapting themselves to technological innovation and using advanced technologies. So they managed to differentiate their operations, adding new activities such as people trafficking, crimes, murders, and then traditional sectors such as arms trafficking, drug trafficking, counterfeiting, without losing the focus on the main fact, which is these organizations use violence to reach their objectives and interests. We know that these organizations can be part of complex networks to cooperate with other criminal groups and gangs, having relations also with terrorist groups. So criminal organizations have managed to expand their presence and power. The international cooperation in the judicial field, investigation field, shall evolve because international mechanisms of cooperation provided for other kinds of criminal activities are not sufficient. This is why we have to evolve, such as the Mafia do. Within this context, we need to improve, strengthen safety and justice within our countries. In this regard, we know that the fight against cross-border organized crime does not require only the eradication of these kind of crimes, but also the strengthening of public authorities working on this problem through an integrated approach and a constant assessment of strategies implemented day by day. Such an approach influences the strengthening of judicial corps authorities, the enforcement of law, so that all these actors can play their role in the best conditions. We need to improve the connections between countries to exchange information and to localize fugitives at an international level. We also have to act in order to seize capitals and assets to criminals, and then protection through programs allowing to foresee crimes in order to reduce the demand for illegal products such as drugs. And then we have draft bills which could contribute to improve the laws against organized crime. Not only through punitive sanctions, but also through the consolidation of judicial measures. Concerning this one last aspect and the improvement of the efficiency of cooperation mechanisms at an international level, I'd like to refer to interinstitutional cooperation and joint investigation teams. Efficiency and efficacy are two important notions, pivotal to fight against organized crimes. Through efficacy, we try to reach our goals. Efficiency, instead, has a different goal, which is to better exploit the available resources. Today, we try to progress in both directions, which is having greater efficacy and efficiency. This is why we stress the importance of interinstitutional cooperation, which is also referred to as informal cooperation, as it is related to interaction between several equivalent organizations in different countries in a less formal way compared to institutions. This form of cooperation is not informal. This is why we do not really appreciate this expression, informal cooperation. It is called informal operation because it is based on spontaneity. But this direct cooperation works when the actors involved know each other. So this direct cooperation is characterized by direct approach, mainly based on the exchange of resources and knowledge among international operators and actors, contributing to the development of informal networks, contacts, and exchange of good practices. This form of cooperation is not exclusive. One of the main characteristics of this cooperation is that it is complementary to traditional tools, allowing more rapidly to exchange information and act in a tempestive manner, supporting traditional channels in international judicial assistance. The main goal is to have a specific direction to follow in order to reach concrete goals. Starting from the Ibero-American Association of Public Prosecutors, IAAMP, which I'm in charge of since the beginning of this year. It groups the public prosecutors of 22 countries. So the goal of this association is to strengthen the cooperation in the field of justice and fight against criminals. This association plays a pivotal role in improving judicial cooperation among Ibero-American countries, promoting a more coordinated response to common challenges. For the judicial system, through its work, the association contributes to reinforce the rule of law, the protection of human rights. Besides the institutional strengthening and the modernization of public prosecutors' offices and the protection of autonomy of public prosecutors, one of the goals of the association is the improvement of judicial cooperation, promoting the exchange of experiences and best practices between the member countries. Thanks to this approach, it is possible to work with permanent networks of specialized public prosecutors in different fields, for example, money laundering, illegal capitals, human beings trafficking, IT attacks, criminal justice, environmental protection, and gender violence. We have 9 networks in which the prosecutors, specialized prosecutors, can share their knowledge, data, and information best practices, and also they exchange information in a timely manner. I would like to stress the fact that the framework of this kind of meetings is the starting point for a positive institutional cooperation. I took part in similar meetings in person, and during the breaks, I took part in very interesting discussions concerning our common work. So this shows that all prosecutors are interested in working this way all together. I'm very happy to see that Argentinian prosecutors responsible for specialized units are young people and passionate people. And I share the same feelings. This is why I'm very positive when I see that other prosecutors from other countries become members of the association. Since September 2018, several agreements were signed with public ministries of all countries. This constitutes the legal framework needed to fight against criminal organizations. So the association is an essential platform for the development of public prosecutors' offices in Latin America, promoting justice, freedom, legality in the region. This is extremely important as the association has key partners, for example, the Conference of Justice Ministers of the Ibero-American region and the IBERED, and also the European agency Eurojust. We have other tools at our disposal, such as the joint investigation teams. We have an acronym which is ECI for these teams, which are the ideal tool to fight against criminals in several countries and to support police forces. These teams are extremely useful when it comes to organized crime at an international level, as these teams allow judicial authorities to take part in a joint international investigation in order to reach their targets. So this combines two systems, the formal one and the informal one, supporting the direct participation of the involved countries and allowing for a rapid exchange of information. And of course, the results will be useful to all participants and the members of these investigation teams. The joint investigation teams define the rules, their own functioning rules. But these rules are defined at an international level through multilateral agreements. In this way, the authorities of each country can cooperate in an efficient manner in the field of international crimes. The UN Conventions on the Legal Traffic of Drugs constitutes the basis of these instruments, and also the Conventions on Vienne, of Palermo, and of Merida in 2003. And in the Articles 9, 19, and 49 promotes international cooperation through these common investigation teams. We also have several conventions and protocols at the European level. For example, the protocols of Europol or Eurojust on joint investigation teams. In Latin America, we can rely on the framework agreement of Mercosur, an agreement approved by Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and Brazil, an agreement approved in May 2020. Concerning Argentina, we promoted several interinstitutional cooperation agreements with 16 public prosecutors' offices at an international level, and as well other conventions. And we've also signed several agreements for the creation of joint investigation teams in specific cases, and we are assessing the possibilities to create new teams. As a success stories, we can mention the Clan Losa, which was convicted for 10 of its members. Was an international organization for drug trafficking and money laundering, active in Spain and Argentina. In November 2017, two people coming from Madrid were identified. They arrived in Buenos Aires at the airport. They were trying to enter Argentina with more than 300,000 euros. So a joint investigation team was created among Spain, Argentina, and Italy, coordinated by Eurojust. And Eurojust managed to support and coordinate the exchange of information and the operations of this team. In Argentina, an interdisciplinary team was created together with the specialized prosecutor for drug trafficking and economic crimes. And also custom activities. And you also have another case, the one of the transnational organization active in Argentina and China, active in the field of human people trafficking and money laundering. So a joint team was created among Argentina and Chile. Within this operation, people were arrested, assets seized at the same time in both countries. I think we have to keep moving forward this direction, exploiting the tools we have at our disposal. These represent the best solution we have. Our experience is made of exchange, cooperation, and I think that cooperation is the base for our work through long-term structures and organizations. Thank you so much.
Grazie per questo bel intervento. Abbiamo avuto una mattinata ricca, credo, e ci meritiamo una pausa fino alle 14:30 precise, mi raccomando. A dopo.